Here's something interesting. So we've been talking for several years now, and particularly in the last year, the last year and a half, and since my book, When the Lion Roars, came out, because in that I drew all the connections to what's happening in the Middle East now. Unprecedented things. We're the first generation in history to see a lot of these things happening. We can go through them in a minute. And now we got a new president. The globalists are against him. Witches are having seances all over the world and praying against him. The Satanists are coming against him. The internet, ubiquitous reports of prayers and seances and spells. The demonic knows that something is happening spiritually. We know what's happening in the Middle East. And then in the midst of this, Trump takes office and North Korea blows up. No pun intended. They blow up. Geopolitically and spiritually right before our eyes, threatening to annihilate everybody with nukes. And yet, people have been wondering and asking, how could North Korea be connected to prophecy? Because there's no place in the Bible that seemingly points directly to North Korea. So I'm going to hush and let you start tying some of these things together. I'll jump in there with you, but let's talk about this for a few moments because it's getting curiouser and curiouser every day, particularly what Fox News is reporting about North Korea and its connection to a Middle East country.
No, it really is. And we actually talked about some of this last week here on Freedom Friday, just within the last few weeks. You and I have recorded some Line of Prophecy television shows, which you can find on the P.P. Simmons YouTube channel and on Carl Gallups' YouTube channel, about this very subject because it's just front and center. I mean, every day, North Korea. And then you have Trump firing back, they better not test any more missiles, on and on, meetings with China about North Korea, China stationing troops on the North Korean border. And then now we see today an article from Fox News, and the title is Pentagon Eyes Iran, North Korea military connection.
Iran and North Korea. Persia.
Of Ezekiel 38. That's exactly right. And so if you go on to read this article, what we find is that it appears, according to this article and military sources, that some of the Iranian nuclear technology and weaponry is being designed, at the very least, possibly even supplied by none other than North Korea. And we keep saying this, watch North Korea, because they could be used to kick off this major world war that seems to be building in the Middle East. And then here we see it now, a direct connection to Persia and North Korea, all centering on the Middle East. By the way, Persia, Iran, the nation that is in the news every single day, saying that they want to annihilate Israel, that they want to drive them into the sea, on and on. So if you want to know, does North Korea have anything to do with the Middle East and Bible prophecy and this seemingly building World War III scenario that's just front and center in our headline news right now? Well, it looks like they are right in the very middle of it.
Yes. And let me make some other connections that you and I have talked about because I know you'll want to weigh in on them. So here's some other connections. So if the Pentagon is now drawing connections between North Korea and Iran and nuclear technology, where does Iran's nuclear technology come from? Well, most of it comes from Russia. Perhaps Magog, and many Bible scholars believe that the definition of Magog is not only Russia, but perhaps Turkey and some of the Stan nations, because Magog is not the name of a particular country with borders that we know, but more connected to tribal areas, and of course we get all of the attack from the north that comes out of Ezekiel 38 and 39, and so we know from directly north of Israel is Turkey. Directly north of that is Russia and the Stan nations. So you've got Russia in the Middle East with military troops sitting in Syria, a collapsing civil war Syria, Damascus lying partially in ruins, and Isaiah 17 says in the last days it will be totally in ruins before it's over. And then China comes into the Middle East, Brandon, bringing their military troops, giving them to Russia in Syria. Russia's tied to Iran, and get this, Barack Hussein Obama signed a compact with Iran about nukes, which he said was going to hold them back, but yet every military analyst and half of Congress that looked at it said, oh no. In fact, Benjamin Netanyahu addressed Congress and the United Nations and says what Barack Hussein Obama is doing is going to ramp up Iran's nuclear capabilities. And now he's gone, Trump is in, and now Iran, we discover, is connected to North Korea, and China was supplying troops and money and armament to North Korea in the Korean War, and they both have embassies in each other's capitals. They are trade partners. They have emissaries that go back and forth. Brother, China, Russia, North Korea, Iran, all of them connected, all of them in the Middle East. You know, North Korea doesn't have troops there. In Syria, and in the meantime, while Syria is collapsing, ISIS is destroying borders, and Turkey is developing into an Islamic caliphate to be the center of Islam through the world. And the book of Revelation says that it's where Turkey is where Satan has his seat. I mean, how could it be more prophetic? How could it be more prophetically tied?
Just one day ago, ABC News carried a headline that read, Russia, Iran, and Turkey sign on, quote, de-escalation zones in Syria. Russia, Iran, and Turkey. So Russia and Turkey, the two Magog nations that most scholars believe tie into the Magog, and Persia are now working together in alliance.
Yeah, which comes right out of, folks, in case you're new to the Word of God, Ezekiel 38. And Ezekiel 38 follows Ezekiel 37, which prophesies that in the last days the nation of Israel will return. Ezekiel 38 says, after Israel has returned, then these nations will begin to align themselves. A massive world war scenario will break out in the Middle East, and it will eventually be aimed at Israel. And it names the countries, and the two main countries are modern-day Iran and Russia/Turkey.
Yes, and we can talk about this after the break, but just last week we were talking about the importance of China, and their lone military base off of Chinese soil is located in northern Africa. We talked about this last Friday, Djibouti, and I heard Steve Pachinik, of all people, whether you agree with him or disagree with him, this week on another radio show talking about the importance of what is going on in Djibouti right now.
Yes, because Steve listens to Freedom Friday, probably.
Yeah.
I mean, no doubt. I mean, how many times have we broken something here, and within days, it's on WND, it's on other radio shows, and I mean, it's unbelievable. And I'm just kidding saying they listen to us. I know a lot of them do, but I'm not being arrogant about it. It's just amazing how it all starts tying together.
Well, some of this is just, it's world news, and how can you miss it if you're looking at anything that's going on?
Yeah, if you know anything about the Word of God, and if you are keeping up with geopolitical world news, you really can't miss it. And that's, for those of you that don't have the time to do all that, that's why you listen to Freedom Friday, because we're going to keep you connected, okay? We don't set dates. We don't proclaim things. But we do try to make the connections and help you see them as well. All right, well, we're going to come back with more. Brandon Big B, we've got a whole lot more show to do. Brandon Big B, welcome back. Listen, we've got 5 or 6 minutes. Why don't we wrap this up before we move to the next segment? But these connections with North Korea, because a lot of people are asking, and see, some people have just passed off North Korea as well. It's just a little country. He's just a big bloviating fat boy, and he doesn't know anything, and none of this matters, and ha, there's nothing prophetic to this, and, you and I don't run around and look for prophecy under every rock, and we don't, claim this is prophetic. But what we do is we just pay attention to what's going on around us, and we pay attention to connections that are obvious. And now the U.S. military, the Pentagon, is saying, oh my gosh, North Korea and Iran are tied together at the hip with nukes. Well, we already know that Russia's tied with Iran. We already know that China is tied together at the hip with North Korea and has been for decades, all the way back prior to the Korean War. And now we have China in the Middle East with its troops, Russia in the Middle East with its troops, and in Syria collapsing. And then Turkey's collapsing into an Islamic caliphate. I mean, I could go on and on. I've already said all this. But I want you to reiterate what you said last Friday, because China's military base is in a certain location that Ezekiel 38 speaks of as being a major player in the very last days after Israel returns. Tell us about that again. Remind folks.
Yeah, it does. And not only that, I just think this is so important. This is China's only military installation that is not on Chinese soil.
Mm-hmm.
So what are the chances of all the places in the world that China could set up shop with a military installation not on Chinese soil, that it would be a country that directly corresponds to an ancient Bible prophecy, and then all of a sudden, here it is. We see it happen. And the country it's a little North African country, and I mean, look, it's hard to find on the map. It's just a little,
it's teeny.
just a little speck on the map, right next to Ethiopia, Cush, a Bible in
is
Bible
the Bible
language.
name. That's right. Mm-hmm.
That's right. Is the country of Djibouti,
Mm-hmm.
and scholars believe now through records, ancient records that have been uncovered just in the last couple of hundred years and interpreted, that little small, tiny little speck of land where China has its only military installation corresponds to the biblical nation of Put, P-U-T. And China just happens to set up shop there.
Yeah.
The only place in the world. And that's where they pick to set up shop with a military installation. And the only reason that they even opened a military installation there is to supply Russia with troops in Syria.
Yeah.
It just happened in the last 2 years, 18 months or so.
Yeah.
It's only been in existence that long. And we talked about this last Friday. We talked about this in some things we recorded, again, for Lion of Prophecy TV in the last few weeks. And then I'm listening to the radio earlier this week, and I hear Steve Pachinik, a high-level intelligence guy for many, many, many years, and regardless of what you think about him as a person and what he says, he is who he says he is. I mean, the guy's been involved in some crazy stuff, intelligence stuff over the years. He's on radio talking about that Djibouti is key. It is central, his words, to everything that is going on in the Middle East right now.
Yep.
Can you imagine?
I know. And again, these are intelligence people. This is military. This is Pentagon. They're saying what we're saying minus the biblical connections. In other words, the biblical connections are there. They're just not saying what we're saying. They're not saying, oh my gosh, North Korea is tied to Iran. Well, they did say that, but they didn't turn around and say, and that's in the Bible. But we are saying it because Iran is connected to Russia. Russia is connected to China. China is connected to Put. And China is connected to North Korea. And North Korea is stirring up what could be World War III. It's connected, brother. The hip bone is connected to the leg bone.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And I can't believe that some of these people don't know these connections, the biblical connection. Maybe they're just not allowed to or feel confident in openly expressing them.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. Well, Brandon, hang in there because we're going to bring you back in a moment. Folks, we're going to come back right after this.